a spiritual awakening. You know, a spiritual awakening is not all love and light. It's not all crystals and incense and tarot cards. It's not all energy healing and sister circles and meditation and sharing the love. It really, really isn't. It's actually so dark and so painful sometimes. And I was there. I was at that place where I thought I'd had a spiritual awakening. And a spiritual awakening isn't a one-off occurrence. There's many awakenings that occur. There's many shifts in perception. There's many layers and parts of that journey. And I was there at that place, and now I'm not. And, I'm still not fully awakened. I'm not some guru sitting there in the mountains, just completely this ball of love, embracing my best life. I'm still not there, but I'm not where I was. And this is what I wanted to talk about, is the grieving of our old selves and that whole process. Sometimes I wish I wasn't where I was. Sometimes I wish I hadn't changed. Sometimes I wish I didn't know what I did know. I wish I was still unconscious. I wish I was still ignorant. I wish I could still play the game and be that person. I've had one foot in the old, one foot in the new for such a long time, and wanting to, like I say, go back to that old way of being, go back to my old self. I look that's been brought into my awareness a lot lately, the past versions of self, probably this whole year. The more space and self-acceptance I find for my shadow self, the more I can see the shadow self really clearly. And I've been able to kind of retrieve and gain more and more self-awareness around this human self, around how she operates, around her unconscious patterns, her beliefs, her needs, her values, her desires, the different parts of self. And like I say, the more space you can hold for this human, the more you can see it. So that's been coming into my awareness, and what I've been doing probably this whole month is shedding my attachment to my old self. And this has been a process of so many different things that have occurred in the external and in the internal, and it's just been showing me all these different versions of myself. And I miss it. I miss that version of me. I see that life, and as a coping mechanism and as a way of keeping myself connected to the old, it's almost like I have made it so painful, so negative, so much hurt, because it enabled me to, in a very strange way, to keep reliving it, to keep it alive, to keep connected, to still be that old version of me. By still experiencing the pain of the past, I was still connected to the past and still connected to my past selves. And my fear of moving forward, my fear of moving into the unknown, my fear of embodying this newest version of myself was so big, and still is sometimes. I'm still at that place. I'm still shedding. I believe I'll probably be shedding at least for the next couple of weeks as we go through eclipse season. That's what it's helping me to do. But the more space I'm holding for these different aspects of self, the more I'm able, just completely giving them love and emotional freedom and really getting to know these shadow aspects, the less fear I have about moving forward. And then I contract. Like I say, I completely contract, and I'm still scared. I'm still scared. I don't want to let go. And it's like this huge pain of grief. And this is what I mean by a spiritual awakening isn't love and light. It is a massive amount of pain. And even this part that I'm going through now, like grieving, literally grieving my old self, and how that I'd kind of really kept this negative connotations, these negative beliefs around my past, but as a way of keeping me stuck with them, as a way of keeping me connected to it, as a way, I've still got to heal that part of me. I still need to go through this. I'm still triggered by this. I'm still hurting over this. I'm still experiencing this because I wanted to still experience it, because I wanted to still be that old version of me. And recently I was like, this is very recent, looking at photos of me, and I was like, I miss her. I miss it. I miss that life. Like, I was pretty. I was beautiful. I was happy. I had loads of friends. I had a big social life. Like, that's how, like the mind tricks me, because yeah, that was beautiful, that life. But I was unconscious then, and I was stuck in my own pain cycles. But I'm also not looking back at that part of my life as, oh, I was just unconscious and causing pain. I'm actually, for the first time ever, like looking back at it with sadness that is over, and not sadness of the pain that I experienced, almost like a celebration of the wisdom that I learned at that stage of my life, who I was then, the happy memories I have. Like, not all of my past was miserable and painful. Not all of my connections were miserable and painful. They were unconscious, yeah, but they weren't always painful. And I have some amazing memories that I shared with many people throughout those stages of my life. And that's where I've been so conflicted, because I look back, and because I'm no longer looking back at it in pain, I am grieving so hard, like, because I do miss it. But even if I wanted to go back, I can't. Like, I've tried. I've tried to go back to being unconscious. I've switched off, like, pretended, put a mask on. And I don't mean, like, sometimes we have to wear a mask, like, in society. You don't go around being a spiritual guru all day. Do you know what I mean? I have responsibilities. I'm a mum. Like, imagine if I turned up to, like, my son's football and was like talking about all of this shit. Yeah, like, it wouldn't go down well. And I'm still awakening myself. There is still some masks that I'm yet to discover. There's still some unconscious patterns that I'm yet to discover. There's still aspects of self that I'm yet to integrate and bring healing and love to. Like I said, I'm not there yet. I'm in that process of just uncovering these different aspects and bringing them closer, because what kind of happens here is, like, when you reject and shame and abuse those parts of yourself, you push them far away. It's like a fragmentation of your soul, and they kind of get stuck in that place. So as you're doing shadow work, or as you're becoming conscious to the unconscious patterns, first and foremost, my massive go-to thing was to self-shame and self-abuse. So as I was becoming conscious of my unconscious patterns, as I was becoming aware of, like, the deep subconscious pain that I held, it was hard for me to not shame and abuse, because there was a shadow aspect of me that I hadn't become conscious of that would then override this conscious awareness. So it's a lot of conscious words: subconscious, unconscious, conscious. It's all a bit getting too conscious for me. But I hope it's like making a little bit of sense to you. Is what I'm saying is, as I was unraveling, as I was discovering certain behaviours and patterns and beliefs that I was operating from, my shadow self would shame and abuse. So I kind of, like, contracted back, and I wouldn't actually be able to integrate that part of self, like, who was operating in that way, because there was such shame. But recently, this past year, there's been less and less shame, less and less self-abuse, and more me actually working with that shadow aspect that did abuse, that does shame myself, so that she is fully pulled back in and integrated. And that means going back and, pulling that part of my soul that I was pushing away. So now I'm at the stage where I can, become more and more conscious of my unconscious patterns. And that's really hard sometimes to do that. It's not easy. Like, it's shocking sometimes to discover the things that you do. Like, and it's like hard to be open to that when your defense mechanisms, are high. but yeah, like I said, the more space that I create for my shadow, the more I integrate, the more relationship I have with my shadow self, I am able to kind of become even more aware and more conscious of those behaviours. And now I don't feel so angry at my past, and I can see it for what it is. It's almost like I feel like I'm at a stage at the moment where I'm truly celebrating my past, all of it. Like I'm truly grateful to the connections that I shared. Like, and it's almost like what I will take forward now will be the wisdom of the lessons that I learn, and the happy memories, or not even just happy memories, just memories. They're not happy or sad, they're just memories, they're just experiences that occurred. And that's what I get to take forward, like in the next stage of my journey. But why I haven't been able to move forward is because I was so scared of leaving the past behind. And and that's where I'm at, like grieving that, just grieving the past, like, and grieving my old self, because the way that I've dealt with it up until now is there was something wrong with me and that I needed to get better. Like I've talked about that before. And then there was huge self-acceptance, and the more self-acceptance I got, the more I could integrate these soul fragmentations, the more I could pull them closer, the more I could become aware. And then it got to that stage where I didn't want to stop being in pain, because if I weren't in pain anymore, that meant that I couldn't go back. that meant that I couldn't keep pushing forward, that I couldn't let go, that I couldn't see my past for what it was, that I couldn't. And like I said, not all of it was sad. It was just a lot of it, well, I was completely unconscious. So there was times where I caused pain to others and caused pain to myself unconsciously, but there was also times where we shared happiness, laughter, fun, connection. There was dreams that were made when I was unconscious that I've struggled to let go of. There was parts, it's just a whole experience. And this is what I'm saying about, they don't really talk about the grieving process of a spiritual awakening. Like, I remember going on my course, that in my intensive tantra course that changed my whole life, and she actually said that to me before I started it. Yeah, she said, are you ready for this? Like, are you ready for your whole life to change, Laura? And I was very in my ego then, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready, I'm so up for this, like thinking like I was gonna get some, I don't even know what, like my soul knew that I was going on that course. My soul knew what my mind couldn't make sense of, like my soul knew why I was there. But my mind and the ego was definitely not aware of what she meant by you ready for your whole life to change. And it did. It changed my whole life, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. And once you become conscious of the unconscious, like you can choose to turn it off again, you can choose to go back and forth. But what I'm trying to get at is it is really quite painful when you do go back. Like I said, like intentionally wearing a mask because there's a certain social situation that you've got to deal with, you've got responsibilities, you've got this, that and the other, that's different. But switching off like your consciousness and going back to your unconscious beliefs, it hurts so much. So even if, like I say, even if I wanted to go back to being old Laura and all love and lighty and practicing yoga and having all these friends and social lives and all of this stuff that I'm kind of grieving at the minute, I can't. I tried. I can't. I literally, it makes me physically sick. I try to be around that energy and I just can't. It feels so uncomfortable for me, so painful, and more painful than it does to keep moving forward. And it's almost like I've had to experience the pain of not moving forward so that I could see, I can't go back. I can't go back to being who I was anymore. Like, and if that means that I've had to lose people, which I have, a lot of people, I have to accept that, I have to accept that people are where they are. You can't push people to become conscious. You can't push yourself to become conscious. It kind of just naturally happens. And it's what we're like, what your soul contract is here. Like I said, my soul contract clearly involved this, because I found that my Tantra trainer was guided to her. Never, it was all so perfectly timed, but the mind couldn't make sense of what I was going through then. The mind had completely different plans to what in fact, I thought I was doing it because I was going to end up with my twin flame. I'm going to do this because the more I, it makes me laugh now because I was so codependent and unconscious. It's like, the more I self-heal, the more layers I unravel, the closer I'll get to be with him. Like, I was still doing things, because I wanted to be in that relationship so much. But obviously my soul knew what I was doing. And it's just like I've been what the people call the dark night of the soul, yeah? And you have many of them too. Don't be under no illusion you have one dark night of the soul. I've had at least two that I'm conscious of. I've probably had more than that. But this past one that I've been in, and I'm still only just coming out of, has been the hardest one because I've been so conscious, and it's hard, but it's been the most expansive and the one that I've learned the most, the one I've integrated the most, because the dark night of the soul is, as you are unraveling, as you are grieving, as you are becoming conscious, as you are healing the shadow aspects, as you are working through your inner child, your mother and father wounds, as you are healing the teenage self, like, that is the dark night of the soul. And I'd say that that's lasted since about 2021 to now. So I'm talking 2 years of me being fully depressed, fully emotional, stuck, full of pain. Some months I've not been able to do anything. Other months I'm like pushing forward, and it all collapses again because I'm still not quite there, or there's another layer. It's been really, really hard. And that's what I'm saying, when in the spiritual community, the love and light community, they're all like, hey, let's share festivals of love and hallelujah. It's like, it ain't that, mate. It ain't that. You ain't had a spiritual awakening, or you may have had like a layer of it. Like I say, I was there. I was going to sound baths, and I was going to yoga retreats and sister circles. I was holding them spaces. I was having all sorts of energy healing. I was giving all sorts of energy healing. I'm not judging people about that, because everyone is where they're at. But what I'm getting at is, when you're in that spiritual community, they portray themselves as if they are awakened. They portray themselves as if they've experienced it. They haven't. And I can literally see, which is one of my gifts, people's shadows and people's inner child, and them operating from it. I can see that happening when someone is operating as their shadow, when someone is operating as their teenage self, or their inner child, or they're triggered by their mother and father wound. I can see that. So when you go in the spiritual community, and I'm literally like, you are not awakened, because right now you're all operating as shadow, or your inner child, or your inner teenager, like, and that's why I find it so uncomfortable and false. But it's not for me to judge, because I was there. And I have been quite judgmental, and I think that's because I was judging myself, which again is, everything's a mirror. Yeah, I was very judgmental. Like I said to you before, I was very self-abusive, very self-shaming, and that same mentality, that was one of my shadow aspects, and that same mentality is what I was kind of projecting onto other people, like, shaming them and judging them and having those faults, because everyone is where they are, and it's not for me to say that or judge that. Like, you do you. Like, if that's where you're at, then that's where you need to be at. Like, you should be at that stage. Your path changes when it's meant to change. And don't get me wrong, I think it is important that I was bringing to people's awareness, because there is vulnerable people that are just beginning on this spiritual journey, that are like, going into that environment, and then when they're feeling this shit dark night of the soul, they think there's something wrong with them. They're like, why am I not love and light? Why are these people judging me? Why do I feel like this? Why do I feel like that? Well, that's because they haven't fully had their awakening, and I don't want those people to feel like there's something wrong with them. It's quite normal to grieve, to be in pain, when you are experiencing this, when you're letting go of the old self, when you are becoming conscious of your unconscious patterns, beliefs and traumas. Like, how on earth is it possibly going to be magical and mystical and beautiful and loving when you are literally balls deep in pain, when you are completely, like, becoming aware of how every single one of your actions has led to certain outcomes, how your behaviours, the way you behave, your personality, how your personality is made up of conditioning and beliefs. That was the big one for me. Like, I remember thinking I was such a funny person, and then realising, that I used humour as a mask to hide from a lot of things, and realising that, I was this. Like, what my personality is not who I am. It's what I am made up of through my conditioning, beliefs and traumas, like, and I still get to wear those masks. Like I said, that you get to kind of decide like what mask to wear and when, but just having that awareness of that is a mask, that's a little bit different. So yeah, it was never going to be like this beautiful, loving experience. It rips you a new arsehole, if I'm honest, over and over and over again. And yeah, so that's where I've kind of been at up till now, is going through the dark night of the soul. And then, like I said, being really, really stuck in missing my old self, like just completely missing being unconscious. Like I said, I wish I could just be unconscious sometimes. I wish I could play the game. I wish I could switch off what I know and just go back into that life and just behave and be with the people I used to be with. But I can't, because I try, and when I go back in there, it causes me so much pain. Like, my soul hurts, because I'm not being authentic to me anymore. I'm not operating from my highest self. I'm engaging in my old ways of being. And again, that kind of needed to happen. I needed to dip in and out for like the past 4 years, so that I couldn't gain all of this awareness. I couldn't become conscious of the unconscious if I didn't go and have a little dabble in it every now and again, like, by going backwards and letting these things play out. Each time I go back and let these things play out, I learn a little bit more, and it's like more comes into my awareness. I become like, a new aspect is brought up for me to heal or deal with, and that's just the journey of how it is. So yeah, getting to a place now where I'm not angry with my past anymore, or angry with myself for growing. Because I was angry that I couldn't go back. I wanted to go back. I wanted to go and be with those people. I wanted to go and be my old self. I wanted to pretend I didn't know what I did, but I can't. So I'm not angry about that anymore. I'm just grieving that and celebrating that and integrating it, really. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for each version of me I've been while I walked this journey. I'm grateful for the completely unconscious Laura. I'm grateful for the Laura, that was in the toxic relationship and had her children, because I wouldn't have had my children if I weren't unconscious, would I? So, that was good. I'm grateful for the experience that I shared as a very toxic family, and the lessons, the absolute wisdom and lessons. I'm grateful for the semi-conscious Laura that, went on all these mystical journeys that was like buzzing all around the place, like self-discovering, and was high vibe and meeting all these new connections, and I enjoying the beauty of the world, and for those connections that I shared whilst I was journeying through that, each person I've been and each connection I've shared, I am truly, truly grateful for. And some I still have to grieve. Some it still hurts, man. Like, it does hurt. But it won't once I keep going through this shedding process. It's just kind of, that's where I'm at. Like I said, I think this will continue as we go through eclipse season for me. So I've just got a different perspective about my past now, and I don't need to think of it in a painful way to keep myself connected anymore. I can just be grateful and celebrate it and take the wisdom and the memories with me, so that it's just a part of this human experience, and keep loving the different aspects of me that are coming up to be integrated, that are coming up to be shed. This has been such an intense process throughout this whole year, I'd say, but intensifying in August and September. And yeah, so just anyone that's going through this, who is in the dark night of the soul, who is becoming conscious of their unconscious patterns, who is beginning to awaken, who is in this shedding process, I'm just sending you loads of love, because I genuinely know how lonely and how hard this really is. And I have respect for you while you go through it.